episode is brought to you by Tambourine Spring Water. Visit tambourinSprings.com.au or call 0434 952 449 to order your water today. Tambourine Spring Water is a local business situated on Mount Tambourine. Their water is bottled at the source on their 163-meter deep privately owned spring. The spring provides access to a free-flowing underground stream, which is where their premium quality spring water comes from. It then goes through a very strict sediment and UV filtration process to ensure the final product remains both consistent and of brightest quality. It is then bottled and stored until it leaves for the client's home or office. Most water companies in Australia all cart their water from a contractor before being processed and then bottled, which leaves lots of room for contamination and foreign bodies entering the water. In Tambourine Springs, it's a matter of minutes from when the water is extracted from the spring into a bottle, which is then sealed and stored into a cool, dark environment. The spring water is naturally bacteria-free and passes all quality tests prior to filtration. Despite that, Tambourine Springs water have one of the strictest filtration systems, so there is no room for error when it comes to your drinking water. They do not add any chemicals whatsoever to the drinking water. The only thing the filters are doing is removing sand and sediments that comes naturally with the water. The three-stage system is there to ensure no bacteria have found its way into the water. When you purchase your water from Tambourine Spring Water, you know you will receive the best spring water Southeast Queensland has to offer from a local family on a mission to provide the best service and quality. Water companies are often blamed with a good reason for polluting the environment with plastic bottles. This is not the case with Tambourine Spring Water. Your water is delivered to your door in 50 or 20 liter bottles, and your used bottles are collected, disinfected and refilled again, so zero plastic waste goes into the environment. Me and my family are also using Tambourine Springs water way before they decided to sponsor this podcast. By experience, once you drink real spring water for a while, you cannot drink from the sink anymore or any commercial waters from the supermarket because it smells bad and has a bad taste. Ridiculously enough, in Australia you can mix 50% of the water with tap water and label and sell it as spring water. This is not the case with Tambourine Springs water. I personally know the family who owns it, and I have been numerous times in their small factory to see my water being bottled straight from the spring after the filtration process. Majority of my team also purchase their drinking water from Tambourine Springs Water. Find out more at tambourinSprings.com.au or call 0434 952 449 to order your water today. If you ever thought that traveling knighthood is dead, you was totally wrong. In this episode, I talk with an historical medieval battle champion and how mixed martial art techniques are applicable in medieval battle full contact fighting. My guest today is Petar Vladov. He is 4-time Serbian Tap Fight Champion, champion of the greatest Romanian Tap Fight Festival, Oradea, champion of the greatest Hungarian Tap Fight Festival, Szigethalom, 2-time Serbian HMB Sword and Shield champion. He was awarded for the most valuable fighter on 5-to-5 tournament. His Mercenary Squad, Baradj, are dominating multiple Bulgarian National Championships, and they are also champions of Serbia and Romania in bridge fighting. He is also an active BJJ practitioner and a blue belt champion from No Gi Sofia Open 2018. You can follow Petar in the links in the description, and I give to you the best word on the Balkans in this episode.
Why do we fight? To protect home and family, to preserve balance and bring harmony. For our kind, the true question is, what is worth fighting for? The Fight is All podcast.
Many people know about when they say martial arts, they think about like the martial arts that come from the East, but not many people consider the Western martial arts. And along with the wrestling and boxing, which I consider from martial arts that come from the West, there was times that people actually was relying on man-to-man combat to stay alive, and where the martial arts that you practice come. Can you tell me the story about how you get involved in those type of martial arts, and you know we go from there.
Yeah, just a quick apologize of my Slavic English first. I hope everybody understands.
That's the root of this podcast, you know, heavy Slavic English and Bulgarian accent.
Yeah. Okay. So the roots of martial arts go deep into the past, and you know, even the first wrestling paintings, they are from stone carvings in Egypt. After that, we have development of the martial arts in ancient Greece. We talk about martial arts without weapons, but you know, from the very first time the first blade was forged, there were also martial arts with weapons. So,
well, I just to interrupt you here, I know from that actually hand-to-hand combat, like boxing, like Roman boxing, it actually falls, it derives its techniques from shield and sword fighting. That's why even like if you see that's when they start, you know, to put their hands up, because that's shield and sword. You know, your strong hand behind and defending hand in front.
yeah, well, actually, the Greek and after that the Roman boxing, they start from the brawls. So they are little because they didn't use gloves. They used only leather straps, which were better to straighten the strike and to protect your hand. So the stance is a little like the English and Irish boxing, and
Yeah, it's more like distance playing and.
yeah, yes. So the basics of sword and shield fight, the Roman sword and shield, are quite different from the Greek, and of course quite different from the later European medieval swordsmanship, because they are different weapons, they have different mechanics, and the fighting style development is totally different.
What's the difference? I'm very interested from it. You know, I follow you, but I don't know much details. What was the difference between, let's say, Roman sword fighting and medieval sword fighting in Europe?
Okay,
In general.
the main difference, of course, is the blades. The Roman sword, the gladius, it is a particularly short sword. It's around 60 centimeters with very wide blade. I don't have Roman swords near me, just to show, but it is mainly for stabbing and slashing. Cutting with this sword, and especially paired with the big Roman scutum shield, is not the best idea. And the late medieval swords, we are talking about the late medieval, around 13th, 14th century, they also were good for stabbing, but the first main difference is the shape of the blade and, of course, the length of the sword. The swords, the one-handed swords from 13th, 14th century, they're around 90 centimeters, 96 centimeters, so they're good for both stabbing, slashing, and cutting. And also, they are paired with different type of shields, which make the combat quite different.
Okay. Alright. Okay. So keep going with the story. So that was like kind of like a bit of interruption, just to clear this up because I was interested. So we keep going for the story of the European martial arts.
What?
So well, you were telling the story before I interrupt you with with this.
Well, I don't want to go in deep details, just not bore the public, but whenever there are people, there are martial arts. If they're systematic or not, it doesn't matter, but fighting is something deep within our human culture. So, especially in Europe, the martial arts developed very high systematic level during the high medieval period, around the end of 12th and the beginning of 13th century. After that, it was they developed quite quickly, so it was a matter of honor and social prestige to have martial arts treatises and books in your private library. So the martial arts were very well systemized, and they start to develop quickly.
Okay, how different is today's medieval fencing, technically, I mean, from let's say the original one that was like practiced like a couple of centuries ago? Because now the thing is like now because I know you and I know you have like experience with the modern martial arts, you know, MMA and grappling. And I have seen your records, so you use some techniques. I'm pretty sure that they're not really medieval, but they really work well as well. So can you give some light on that as well?
Yeah, well, the main difference between the martial arts in the medieval period and in modern age is the goal. So in medieval, the goal was to kill the enemy and to survive. And now the the goal is quite different. It's just to win the competition if it's a sport competition, or just to make better swordsman of yourself when you train. Anyway, yes, but some of the techniques that we know from modern grappling, like the kimura or the guillotine choke, they are also shown in medieval treatises. And many of the wrestling techniques as well, the hip throw and the slam, grabbing the double leg takedown, they are shown in manuscript, the medieval manuscripts.
Well, that's quite curious, you know. Like obviously, you know, like wrestling dominates even the sword fight. Can you say
Yes,
that?
especially when you have armor. So armor is not so easy to penetrate. It's not like the paper armor we know from the Hollywood movies, where every blade cuts every armor. Armor normally is very different to penetrate. So in medieval manuscripts it's shown, but we are doing some tests in 21st century, of course, and combat in armor, it's called harnischfechten in the treatises. It's mainly grappling. So
Wow.
you finish the guy with some ground and pound with the weapon, or find some holes in the armor, but mainly to ground the opponent.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Oh, I actually did think about that, you know, like you know, like when you think about sword fighting, you think about you know, like stand-up fighting mostly, you know, but you don't really think that it actually still goes to the ground and like you actually apply ground technique. That's quite
Yes,
curious.
there is a huge difference between sword fight of unarmored opponents and sword fight of guys that have armor on them. So it is totally different. That's why even in the medieval manuscripts, it is called Bloschfechten, the unarmored combat, and the Harnischfechten, the combat in full harness. So
So that's kind of gi and no gi grappling, like like armor and no armor fencing.
yes, the difference is even bigger. So, yeah, the difference is even bigger, but it's kind of the same. It is the same techniques, but some of them doesn't work. So, you know, many of the gi techniques doesn't apply to no gi.
Uh, can you just put some light on the rules of the modern like how it's actually a correct way to call it, like a medieval fencing, or how is actually the name of the modern sport?
Yeah, well, there are different types of martial arts with modern swords. So the main the father of the family is the HEMA, which means historical European martial arts, and it covers a very wide variety of weapons and in different time periods, because you know weapons evolve. The weapons from the 10th century and weapons from the 12th century are totally different, and of course later periods also. So the biggest family member is the HEMA, and there you normally in competitions you compete with modern fencing masks, modern protective equipment, and of course historical weapons, which are almost exact copies of museum and antiquity weapons. It's not fantasy swords or something like this. And of course, it's not only swords. There are daggers, there are axes, there are polearms, and you fight generally with the modern equipment and historical weapons. The rule sets of every competition, they have variety. The other thing, the other family member, it's the reenactment fight. You normally fight with, of course, every time with blunt weapons. And in reenactment fight, you reenact some character, time, epoch, and geographical region. So, for example, I'm reenacting First Bulgarian Kingdom, 10th century, and I'm dressed, armored, and armed with weapons and armor that are from this time period and geographic. And there, the rules are a little different because we have open helmets and we don't do steps. And it is clearly a sport fight. It's not a real combat.
Okay,
and,
so what you can do and what's forbidden as techniques in this rule set?
Well, in the reenactment fight, it's forbidden to make horizontal strikes because of the open face helmets. It's forbidden to hit the palms, to hit the groin, and to hit the legs below the knee. And it is quite easy style. It's more dynamic. There are different type of fights. You have one-on-one fight. You have 5 versus 5. This is the team fight. And we have also mass battles and bridge fights. It's different disciplines. And the most interesting fighting style and the most brutal of them, it is called Buhut. So it is from medieval French knight tournaments. The idea is from there. It's from the 14th and the 15th century. So the fighters, they are covered in full armor. The face, of course, is protected by that time period. And the rules are quite different. So you hit the guy, and until he can stand on his feet, he's considered alive. But if he goes to the ground, he's considered dead. So you can apply grappling there, you can do some throws, but the main difference is that you must beat the guy or the team, the opposing team, until they fall to the ground. So the weapons are.
So what happens, for example, if you shoot double leg, let's say, and you fall with him? If you fall over, do you consider dead?
Yes, when you apply a technique and you both go to the ground, you're considered dead.
Both of you?
Yeah, both of you, of course. And,
so you kind of have to make like a clear throw, like in sambo and judo, like when you apply takedown, but you keep standing.
But you keep standing. Anyway, there is one discipline. It's called a pro fight. It's like an MMA fight. There is ground fighting, but it's only 1 versus 1. It's only a duel. So you can go to the ground, you can try to stand up, you can do ground and pound, but in mass fights or in team fights, ground and pound is forbidden. Because you can imagine
that should be messy.
Yeah, 3 guys start to ground and pound you with axe or with mace.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
one time.
So is that the profiling rules are because I saw like M1 doing a bit of historical fencing in their shows, and I saw them like going ground pound. Is that these rules that you just said about?
Yes, in M1 this fighting style is called HMB Pro Fight, historical medieval battle pro fight. So in some MMA galas, mostly in Russia and Ukraine, they are doing warm-up fights with some HMB guys, and this is the pro fight. Yeah, it's like MMA rules. You can do also submissions, but it is quite dangerous to do submissions with the armor because you cannot feel the tap from the guy if you make a kimura, for example. So the judges
Oh yeah,
are, yeah, in
have to be
100%.
more.
Yeah, Yukimura, the guy, he taps and you don't feel nothing. So,
Oh yeah, you actually covered with shell. Yeah, I never thought about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was in actually in this type of competition 3 weeks ago in Russia, and well, it's fucking hard experience. It is very tiring. You must be in excellent condition because the armor uh, not only weights, but it makes your body temperature high. And doing ground fighting, you know, in the summer is not the most pleasant experience, and you can imagine with armor.
Okay, tell me more about this experience. Actually, like I saw your post in Facebook, and to quote, you won the HMB Sword and Shield tournament, got first place into early medieval and played mercenary for the Brown Bear Company team
Okay.
against five
Yes.
tournament, and you also drank the best dry meat ever. So you pretty much like went back in the time, had the couple of wars, dry some medieval alcohol, and came back. That's how it sounds to me. Tell me more about that. Sounds like big fun.
Yeah, well, it was big fun. It is actually other event that I participate. I didn't participate in the pro fights there, but I participate in sword and shield duels. Actually, it was quite easy competition because not there were not many good fencers. But the interesting thing was the 5 versus 5. I played for the Romanian team as mercenary, and the Romanian team they don't have so many good fighters. They have some, but they have some novice fighters that are not very well conditioning. They don't know much about wrestling and grappling and fighting in general. So it was a big challenge, especially fighting the experienced French team, which are the French fighters are one of the best. And I don't know how, but we managed to beat them and got the second place by the local Serbians. They beat the crap out of us. We couldn't beat them. But yeah, it was nice experience.
Oh, that sounds very interesting. Can you tell more about people who are like ignorant than me, like me, in that know about the strategy? Because most combo sports now, like pretty much they target like man to man fight, like one on one. But the thing is, like if you think about like many street fights and actually like medieval wars, they happen many to many. It's not a duel. It's normally a group fight. So it's very interesting how what kind of strategies you apply and how you deal when you have to fight with a group. That's absolutely different from the modern like martial arts which are popular, because now all tournaments are like mostly man to man. So that's why you see more people going on the ground, and that it's very different when I guess when you're supposed to fight group to group. Can you like put some more light on that? That's very interesting.
Yes, this is actually, of course, the main difference between one-on-one and team is that you may have martial arts skills, but to fight in a group is totally different. You have to think about tactics, you have to think about strategy, which are also different things, and you must fight during thinking. And
Okay, let's just say that. So first of all, let's clarify the rules. So what are the rules on like these mass fights, like 5 to 5 fights? Like so what you aim for, and what is band technique? Like pretty much like brief light on the rule set on this one.
Okay, well, the most interesting discipline is the 5 versus 5, where there are teams, but there are sometimes mass fights. For example, in Serbia, in the Battle of the Nations tournament, there were disciplined two teams, each of 150 fighters. So you can imagine, yeah, 300 idiots bashing each other with swords and shields and halberds, axes. So when you go to the ground, when you smash somebody to the ground with the halberd, he's considered dead. So you smash the other team to the ground, and they consider that. By the way, interesting thing about tactics about this particular mass fight was that we were team up with the Russians and some other guys against Ukraine, against Poland, very tough fighters. So
And
we
Polish are famous being tough people from the Eastern Europe. You know, they're always tough.
all the Eastern Europeans, yeah, we have this thing about toughness. Anyway, so we implied the Roman legion tactic. We make chess formation. So some of their attacking teams they went into a void that we made, and we just went around them and beat them very easy because they didn't have space between them to fight properly. So we make them a very compact mass and kick their shit.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
And
but it was just kicking ass.
that's
It was
crazy.
it was slaughtering, but they enjoyed also because it was crazy to see 150 armored guys and 150 standing before them and start slashing. Oh my God, it was the best experience of my life.
Well, it sounds quite crazy though. Like, uh, how uh, how big is the danger from injuries in such sport, let's say? So what's the main injuries that you get from that? Because
Oh
it's
yeah,
full contact, right?
yeah, it's full contact, and many injuries come from bad equipment and poorly training, but the main injuries are the knees. You know, when you grapple with somebody, you throw him. You know, sometimes he falls on your leg, and you twist your knee or your ankle. You can imagine that when he has 30 kilograms more, and you also have 30 kilograms more on yourself. Doing
That's
Kanuchi.
pretty much one more person, like the weight of the one more person in the fight. So like 60 more kills into the fight itself.
Yes, yes. Imagine doing Kanuchi Mata with 60 kilos more on your boat, and you fall on the knee or your ankle. Anyway, some of the hits are forbidden. For example, you cannot hit the back of the neck. You cannot hit, of course, the back of the knees. But sometimes the judges don't see it, and there are some dirty fighters. You can imagine this place cannot be very well armored or protected with padding or something. So most of injuries come from this hitting the back of the knee or the back of the head. I have seen some idiotic things. The fighters were paralyzed. The medics they stay paralyzed for a couple of years, or some of them more. So this is not common, but I have seen it enough.
Yeah, contact sports like always has danger, and you guys are not only playing full contact. You have played full contact with iron rods pretty much, which doesn't help much. It's just
Yes. Yeah, well, normally the armor protects you from most of the hits, but sometimes the leather straps of the helmet are not very well attached, so you get hit by an axe in the face, and some of your teeth or part of the teeth fall on the ground. So yeah, it's full contact. So normally, even if you have the best defense, you can get some minor or major injuries.
well, I can imagine that especially in these group fights, because there's like a group fight like for me like increase the percent of the chance in the fight, because when you fight with a single person, you kind of have control and your attention is on over his actions, right? But
Yeah.
when you have like other people involved in the fight, you cannot spread your attention more on too much other like opponents, let's say. So they had like the accident, the chance of something accident that you have no control over to happen to you increases like highly, and I think that's what makes it like way more dangerous than any other like any other combat sport like that exists today.
Yes, this is one of the things you say. You have no control of the situation. Sometimes you run, you want to attack an opponent, you don't see because of the visor of the helmet makes your perception very different. So somebody trips you from behind and you fall to the ground, twist your knees, and it's not the most pleasant experience. Anyway, or you are in the corner and you get beat up from three angry guys with axes. So this is also not the best experience. Sometimes, even if you want to die, if you want to fall on the ground, you cannot fall because they keep you pressed against the fence. So, yeah, but it's part of the fun, you know.
Uh, well, I told you like remember like the last time we met wife was when you actually it was kind of like demonstration fight that you make on a fight night.
Yeah,
And that's when you gave me to put the hammer. That's where we actually met wife was like 2016. We met
yeah.
each other was and yeah it and that was like first time I saw this wife, right? And there was MMA fights after. Then I thought like, man, like up to this moment I thought like MMA fighting is kind of crazy. But when I saw these guys fighting with armor and with swords, man, we actually our sports looks like way more, like safe and controlled than what you guys are doing. It's absolutely crazy what you're doing. I guess the adrenaline rush is big, but it seems quite dangerous sport.
No, actually, the adrenaline rush is big when you're a novice, like every combat sport. But when you're used to the training and the tournaments, it is. By the way, it looks dangerous and aggressive, but it is not so dangerous after all. So many people who have not proper combat training are doing it. Not for much time, of course, but it's not so dangerous. It looks amazing. Okay, you hear the metal clashing, and you see the sparks, and you see the heavy armor and the swords and the axes. But in general, it is dangerous, but not as dangerous as it looks.
Cool. Do you think would you say it's more dangerous than MMA or like less dangerous than MMA? How you qualify that?
Oh, it is like to ask which sport is harder, boxing or MMA. It is in every competition is different. So if you have hard your opponent in HMB pro fight, you can get hell, and you can get injured. The fight can be very tiring. Or you can have novice guy that you beat up for 10 seconds and TKO him and he's out of the competition. It's like in MMA. You go, you can submit a guy for 50 seconds, or you can have 5 rounds of hell with him. It's, very subjective.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. So speaking about the armor, like, so the armor you guys wear, like, how much it resembles the original armor that was wear the original historical time? Like, is it modernized in a way, or or you guys more trying, to resemble the original armor that was actually used in the certain historical period that you actually trying to resemble?
Yes, this is also very subjective because some fighters they don't really care about authenticity of their armor and weapon set, and they change a little. They use some, of course, most of us use hidden protection, especially of the groin. But if I have to speak for myself, my armor is totally authentic, and it's just like the personage from the medieval that I'm recreating. But anyway, you always can use some hidden protection, especially for the back of the knees or your spine or your groin. That doesn't is not seen and it's covered with authentic materials.
Also, is there any rules for the protection that you additional protection you can add to your original armor? How
Yes,
that's
sure. Because this sport has grown so much for the last 4 or 5 years. Now there is official organizations, there are official rules, and of course there one of the chapters of the rules. It's the authenticity rule, and also there are judges that in every event that check the authenticity of the fighters, and if your set of armor and weaponry is differs too much from the originals, you're not accepted to fight in the tournament.
Or you cannot go like in these RPG games. You have like
Yeah.
Roman helmet, like like sword from like 18th century, and then armor from space wars or something like this.
Yeah, no, it is not allowed. It is not allowed. So when you recreate, for example, Western Knight, you recreate only Western Knight set and weaponry. When you recreate a Mongol warrior or Golden Horde warrior, you look out for armor like this, helmet like this, armor packs like this, weapons. That's all.
How expensive is to get all this armor? Because that's quite a set of equipment, and especially I don't know if there are people who actually like recreate like couple of different like warriors in time sets, like, and I think that looks like like quite a craftsmanship. And are they like how they produce? Is that all handmade or?
Yes, no, of course. Handmade, we have some machines that help, but there are many craftsmen, and the price normally depends on the skill of the craftsman. So you can buy armor for 1,500 euros or 50,000. So it is 5,000, excuse me. You can buy from 500 to 5,000 the same armor, but made from different craftsmen. Or it is the same with the swords, for example. You can buy a sword for $200, American dollars, and you can buy a sword for $500. It depends. But anyway, it is not very cheap hobby. That's why not many people are involved in this. Uh, of course, the swords and the armor, they need repairs. They sometimes crack, and you need to buy some new. But we don't live in a perfect world.
It seems quite expensive. And do you have sponsors, or you actually like sponsor yourself to do that? I know
Yeah,
in our country we have like quite an issue with sponsors because we don't have like good law for the sport. It's not like the Western countries. Western countries, it's easier to get sponsored because they have like a system that actually helps with the companies with taxes. But in Eastern Europe, it's a bit harder. You pretty much like on your own muscles. How it goes with you?
yeah. Well, I'm my own sponsor. I'm also the sponsor of my grappling club, so it's no. I try to afford the best armor on the market. By the way, in historical authenticity way, the best armor is made from titanium because titanium is 30% lighter than steel, so you can move faster, and also it doesn't bend so easy, so less repairs, less money for repairing. And the best thing is that titanium doesn't rust because when we fight there is a lot of sweat because of the high body temperature, and after every fight you must clean your armor because it's covered with rust.
Uh, so it's quite a maintenance as well. It's
Yes, maintain. The medieval knights, they have boys for this called squires. They maintain all their needs. The knights, they have only the go to fight.
Yeah, now you have to do everything by yourself.
Yeah. I must find some slaves.
Well, in the time period your sport comes from, I think you owe to some, you know, it should be part of the system.
Of course,
uh,
yeah.
okay, let's speak about the training. You know, how you prepare for these events. You know, how different is the actually the sport side of it. You know, how much your routine goes for technique, and how much of it comes with conditioning. You know, like how you structure your training regime for this kind of fighting.
Okay, because the historical fencing tournaments have different rules. I explained the difference between HEMA, reenactment fight, and the HMB. So it depends in what event I'm going. Because if I fight reenactment fight, I focus on my agility and speed workout, which is for normal athletes like football players or and like this, I do a lots of speed ladder, lots of corn works and stuff like this. And when I go for HMB, I focus mainly on my wrestling and judo, of course, and more explosive workouts. So that's the main difference. I also, train MMA, so I try to involve my MMA training to be adjustable to my fencing training. Normally, when I do reenactment fight, I focus mostly on boxing because of the hand speed, the footwork, and things like that. And when I focus on the HMB fight, I focus mainly on Greco-Roman wrestling and judo.
Sweet. Uh, I was about to ask how much your fencing fighting helps your MMA, and how much your MMA helps your fencing fighting.
Oh well, the fencing normally is more like the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It gave you some strange ideas that you can apply in your game. Even when you like to brawl, you can brawl a little outside of the box, and fencing gives you some basic ideas. Also, the management of the distance that gives you is way better even than boxing. So when you can dodge and evade blows from sword, after that it is very easy to evade the blows from fist or foot. And of course, but the MMA training gives you the physical conditioning, the mental toughness, and many warriors, especially when they are novice, they are afraid to get hit and they are afraid to hit someone. And the MMA gives you this basic ability not to be scared of getting hit because you're not made from glass. You will survive a lot of damage, and yeah, and you're not afraid also to punch the other guy because he also is not made from glass, and he's willingly standing in front of you. So these are the basic. It is good to mix MMA. It's like mixing boxing and wrestling. The one gives you one physical abilities and mental abilities. The other just complete you as a fighter.
Yes, sweet. So how can you tell me like what titles have up to now in the historical fencing? In so you won couple of comps recently. So what's in your gold box now from those competitions? How many years you have been doing that? Like that's quite a lot already, I reckon.
No, not so many. I'm doing it seriously around 2 years, but I'm involved around 5 years in this. The problem is the most difficult discipline, the HMV. I'm the only fighter in Bulgaria, so basically I don't have sparring partners. So I have to adapt some MMA techniques that I can train with my MMA guys and the judo guys from the gym and just to get prepared. So in every event outside Bulgaria that I go, I try to do as much sparring as I can with the guys there. So being in a tournament for me is some kind of sparring every time. That's why I try to win because I will have more fights, so I will gain more experience.
Sweet. So how it goes with the with those tournaments? Do you pay to participate when you register, or are there fights that you are getting paid, like professional fighting?
Well, normally you pay your expenses to travel to the event, but in some historical festivals where the main goal is historical reenactment and there are some HMB fights, they cover your travel costs and the food. So, but now there are some tournaments that are paid. So if you win the tournament, you can have a really good prize. For example, last week there was tournament in France, and the prize for the first team on 5 versus 5 was 10,000 euros, which is not bad for unprofessional sport. Yeah. But
So that is,
normally this is sport for just having fun. It is not professionally oriented for now.
sweet. Okay. What's on for you from now? So what you're aiming to? You have like do you have like competitions coming in your calendar? Like what's next?
Okay, for now we have a little event here in Bulgaria. It won't be serious fighting. It won't be a serious tournament. Probably one of my guys will win the tournament. We'll see. And for me now, I focus on the grappling training because in November there will be the Sofia No Gi Open. So I want to compete again there. And in the historical fencing tournaments, they start after New Year. So I will go to Russia in the beginning of the year to participate in one of the strongest competitions in the world there. It's called the Recon. So that's the plan for now. Win the Nogi and after that go to Russia and kick ass there.
Very good. How people can get in touch with you, to follow you in the social media and to watch your fights?
Oh, normally I can hardly watch my fights because when I go with somebody, he's my cornerman or he helps me with getting water or something like this. So we rarely have videos, but in my Facebook profile, I upload whatever I can find. So if somebody wants to keep in touch with me, find Petar Vladov in Facebook, and that's all.
I'm also gonna put a link on the episode. So you said tournament. I forgot to ask. So is there rounds in this these fights in any of the styles, or it just until you finish the other guy? How it goes with that? Is there a time limit?
Yes, there are rounds in every discipline. Normally, in the sword and shield, for example, because this is competition where many fighters fight. Normally, there's some competition with more than 30 fighters. You have one round for a minute and a half. The pro fights, they're a little longer. There are 3 rounds for every round for 2 minutes, and the team fights, the team must win 2 rounds. So, for example, 5 versus 5, our team beat the other team. All 5 guys they're down. We restart the fight for the next round, and when we have 2 rounds won, we win the fight and go to the next stage.
Okay, so it's kind of like 2 or 3 rounds. You have to win 2 or 3 because like in 3 rounds, some of the teams should won 2 times at least.
The question I always ask at the end of this podcast is, for you, what is worth fighting for?
What's worth fighting for? Well, crushing the spines of your enemies, drinking meat from their skulls. But in 21st century, no. Having fun in competition, it's enough.
Thank you for listening to the Fight Zone podcast. Subscribe in your podcast app to receive the next episode, where I talk with 2019 IMFA Queensland Open MMA champion for youngsters under 62 kilograms Diwan Deo and his coach Kerry Dune from Shindu team on the Gold Coast, Australia.